girl who attacked Mutou accused him of being too dangerous, wondering aloud if he was a monster disguised as a human. The god observing the scene was completely dumbfounded. She hadn't expected things to turn out this way. With a sigh, she admitted to herself that she had really messed up this time. The girl, Runa Kakyoin, was another reincarnator chosen by God. Hidden nearby, Runa jumped from her hiding spot to check if Mutou had been killed. To her shock, she saw a silhouette emerging from the smoke. It was Mutou, alive and unharmed. The only visible damage was to his tattered clothes. Mutou stepped out, clutching his head and complaining about the pain, though he noted it wasn't nearly as bad as when he was hit by a car. Runa, seeing him completely fine, raised her bow again. She activated her magic, materializing another explosive arrow. Mutou's eyes widened in disbelief as the arrow appeared out of thin air. Runa aimed her bow directly at him and demanded he stop pretending to be human, urging him to show his true form as a monster. Mutou, utterly confused, stood frozen before responding with a nervous smile, insisting he was human. Runa, unnerved by his eerie smile, snapped at him, asking, "What's with that face?" Ignoring his expression, she pressed on, asking how he had managed to survive being crushed. Convinced that no ordinary human could endure such an injury, she concluded that Mutou had to be a monster, or perhaps a creature from another world. Hearing this, Mutou recalled God mentioning something similar. Runa's eyes widened at his response. "Wait, that short brat who smokes, with the bad attitude and mean glare, that God?" she asked in disbelief. Mutou nodded in confirmation. Back in the divine realm, God was losing her patience. Frustrated with Runa, she threw her pack of cigarettes at the screen and stomped on them in anger, muttering complaints about always being stuck with the most troublesome reincarnations. Meanwhile, Runa was left speechless, struggling to process the revelation that Mutou, like her, was a reincarnated person. Their shock was cut short when, out of nowhere, Runa slipped, or perhaps something pulled her, into the bushes. Mutou, startled, approached where Runa had fallen, calling out to ask if she was okay. He reminded her to be careful around tree roots. But as he reached her, he froze in surprise. Runa was wrapped tightly in the coils of a massive python. Runa struggled desperately to escape, but the snake only tightened its grip. To make matters worse, the python grabbed her bow and snapped it in half before constricting her even further. Fighting back as hard as she could, Runa spotted Mutou and shouted at him to help her. The python tightened its grip around Runa, making it harder for her to breathe. Gasping for air, she pleaded with Mutou to help her, her voice weak yet desperate. But Mutou stood motionless, his body frozen in fear. His breaths quickened as panic set in, his mind racing. What can I possibly do against something so huge? Doubt crept in. Why should I even help her? She attacked me first. She probably wouldn't have hesitated if it meant taking me down. But as these thoughts lingered, a memory from his past surfaced, his mother scolding him with harsh words, blaming him for things beyond his control. He recalled feeling utterly alone during those moments, wishing anyone would step in to help. Her words replayed in his mind. "If I don't do this, you'll never learn. This is for your own good." Snapped back to the present by Runa's cries, Mutou took a shaky breath. Her voice pierced through his doubt, begging for his help. Summoning every ounce of courage, Mutou pushed past his fear. "I have to try, even if it feels impossible." He sprinted toward the python, determination fueling his every step. With all his strength, Mutou struck the python. To his astonishment, the impact was immense, enough to break the creature's hold on Runa and bring it down completely. Runa, now freed, collapsed onto the ground, coughing and catching her breath. She looked up at Mutou with wide eyes. What did you just do?" Mutou was equally stunned, his voice trembling. "I don't know, did I really do that? Is it actually dead?" He glanced at the python's lifeless form, struggling to comprehend what had just happened. Looking at his hand, Mutou's thoughts swirled. Was that really me? Or was it something to do with this so-called useless skill of mine? Now free from the python, Runa shyly looked at Mutou, thanked him for saving her, and apologized for attacking him earlier. She admitted that she had mistaken him for another monster in the forest. Then, turning to him, she asked if he was also reincarnated like her. Yet she was curious about his abilities, the power to come back to life after being eaten by the giant ape, and his ability to take down the python with a single strike. "Are those skills from the goddess? Did she give them to you?" she asked. Mutou shook his head, partially in denial. He explained that his skill was simply a healing ability that let him recover over and over again. As for defeating the python, he admitted he wasn't sure how he managed to do it either. Runa was surprised but listened as Mutou detailed his abilities. She nodded in understanding and pointed out that with his skills it would be incredibly difficult for anyone to hurt him or defeat him. Curious, Mutou asked about Runa's abilities. "What about your skills?" "I saw you materialize arrows out of thin air," he said. Runa smiled and spread her arms. A coat suddenly appeared in her hands. Mutou's eyes widened in surprise. Runa explained that her skill was creation. She could make anything out of nothing, but with one limitation. She could only create things if she understood how they were made. She handed the coat to Mutou, pointing out that he couldn't keep walking around in his tattered clothes. Mutou, receiving a gift for the first time in his life, blushed and shyly thanked her. He then asked about the explosive arrows she had used against him. Hearing this, Runa blushed, flustered, and stammered, "Yeah! Sorry about that." She went on to explain her skill, saying that the arrows she created worked like regular arrows, except they had explosive power. However, they wouldn't work on real monsters. As their conversation continued, they realized they hadn't introduced themselves yet. Runa offered her name first, and Mutou introduced himself in return. With their hostility resolved, Runa suggested they leave the forest. "This place is crawling with monsters. We need to find somewhere safe, maybe a town," she said. But Mutou immediately rejected the idea. Startled by his response, Runa asked him why. Instead of answering, Mutou walked over to a nearby tree, grabbed a vine hanging from a branch, and began inspecting its durability. Runa stared in confusion, utterly flabbergasted by his actions. Looking at her while tying the vine around his waist, Mutou calmly explained, "I'm planning to stay in this forest." Then, without waiting for her reply, he bid her farewell. Runa, shocked by his decision, ran to him and hugged him tightly, stopping him in his tracks. "Don't be reckless," she pleaded, trying to persuade him to abandon his dangerous plan. Mutou, stopped by Runa, complained, "This is why I hate being around people." But Runa retorted, "Of course I'll stop you. You can't just do something like that right in front of me." Mutou sighed, frustrated, and replied, "It's my life. I can do whatever I want." Runa was momentarily speechless, but quickly changed the subject. "This forest is full of monsters. Nothing here makes sense. And above all, we've been given a second chance to live. We should make it count," she said firmly. She continued, "Both of us died before, right? Doesn't that mean we should try to live this time?" As she spoke, a sudden memory flashed through her mind. A man stabbing her. Runa paled, feeling sick to her stomach, but she pushed through. She tried again to persuade Mutou. "I don't know what happened to you," she said, "but if you're so set on dying, why not fight the monsters in this forest instead? At least go out that way." She added, "Even hanging yourself wouldn't work because your skill would just heal you again." Then, her tone softened as she begged, "Mutou, I have a favor to ask. I know it might seem selfish and maybe it feels like I'm just using you, but I want to live in this world. I don't want to die again. Please protect me." Mutou paused, her words sinking in. He began to question why he had been given these abilities. The goddess had told him his skills wouldn't be useful, so why did he have them? After a moment he replied, "You're right. As long as I have this skill, even hanging myself wouldn't work." He added, "But I don't know how I defeated that monster earlier, and I'm not sure if I can protect you. But I'll try." Hearing his answer, Runa's face lit up with relief and gratitude. "Thank you," she said, smiling. "I'm counting on you from now on." With their roles decided, Mutou and Runa realized they needed to find a safe place to camp. Runa grumbled, "Camping in a place like this is dangerous." But Mutou, recalling his past, said, "I used to camp out all the time, mostly in parks and by riversides. This forest is big and full of wildlife. It's doable." Runa shook her head, rejecting his idea. "I was a Girl Scout back then," she said confidently. "Trust me, I know what I'm doing." She began listing their priorities. "First, we need water. Second, food, and last a safe place to stay and a way to start a fire. With their plan in place, they started walking. Along the way, Mutou spotted a mushroom and bent down, tempted to eat it. Runa quickly stopped him. "Don't touch that, it might be poisonous," she warned. After a few hours, they found a small cave. It wasn't much, but it would keep them dry if it rained. Next, they needed a fire. Mutou suggested rubbing sticks together, but Runa rolled her eyes. "Don't be silly, I can just use my skill." She focused and used her creation ability to make a lighter. Feeling proud, she tried to ignite it, but all she heard was a series of clicks. Click, click, click. The lighter was out of gas. Frustrated, Runa threw it aside. Embarrassed, she admitted, "I know how to make a lighter, but I don't know how to make gas for it." She sighed and muttered, "This skill is useless. I can only make items if I understand their properties." Still grumbling, she added, "I'd love to have a word with that goddess right about now." Mutou, meanwhile, noticed something strange. The cave they had been resting near began to shift. The ground trembled beneath them as the cave started moving. It wasn't a cave at all. It was a monster. The massive creature turned toward them, revealing itself to be a giant rhino-like beast. Its menacing gaze locked onto them, and it prepared to charge. Mutou and Runa were now facing their third monster, a massive rhino towering over them, glaring menacingly. Both were surprised by its appearance. Suddenly, the ground began to rise, forming something unexpected. Runa immediately shouted for Mutou to run, but he was a second too late and was pierced by a rock spike. Runa managed to avoid it, but when she saw Mutou get impaled, she froze in shock. Fortunately, Mutou's skills activated and brought him back to life. Taking advantage of this, Mutou ran and carried Runa with him. The rhino, seeing this, launched another barrage of rock spikes. Fortunately, Mutou was able to dodge them as he gained some distance. He set Runa down and prepared to fight the rhino, determined to protect her as he had promised. With a grin, he turned to face the creature and charged. Runa shouted for him to hold up. The rhino, seeing Mutou charge, released another spike, impaling him once more. But with sheer force, Mutou broke through the spike and continued charging. The rhino fired another barrage of spikes. Watching Mutou impaled and rise again multiple times, Runa couldn't take it anymore. Even with Mutou's healing skills, it was too much for her to handle. Despite the continuous barrage of spikes, Mutou was able to get up each time thanks to his skills, but he couldn't get close to the rhino. In this moment of desperation, he began to think about Runa. He knew she might forgive him, but it wasn't likely. If he died here, he would break his promise to her, and nothing would matter anymore. In the midst of his thoughts, an arrow flew past his head, aimed at the rhino. The creature quickly raised a spike pillar, shattering the arrow. Mutou looked back to see Runa materialize her bow and fire multiple explosive arrows at the rhino. The rhino blocked most of them, but the distraction was enough for Mutou to close the distance. Thanks to Runa, Mutou was able to attack from behind, saving him valuable time. With a clear shot at the rhino, Mutou prepared to strike and defeat it, but to his surprise, his punch bounced off, causing his arm to hurt. The rhino's skin was as tough as stone. Still, Mutou didn't give up. He punched the rhino again, and again, and again. The rhino roared in pain, but even as it was being attacked, it kept fighting. Runa watched in disbelief, amazed at how Mutou was determined to keep his promise to protect her, no matter what. On his final punch, Mutou finally defeated the rhino and it collapsed to the ground. With the rhino gone, both of them let out a sigh of relief. However, Mutou soon noticed something about his abilities. At first, punching the rhino had hurt him due to its tough hide, but now he realized that his body was becoming tougher and could take more damage. But their victory was short-lived. Suddenly, an attack struck Mutou. And that's the end of my recap. This is a brand new series called The 3 Skills I Received When Combined Were the Most Powerful. To summarize, it's about the challenges and growth of the main character, and I'm excited to see what happens next for Mutou and Runa.